A very warm welcome to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining this Green Farm Hangout. I'm here joined by other team members from Green Farm, and they're going to introduce themselves, perhaps starting with Kahaso.
Hi guys, welcome back to welcome to our channel, and I hope you enjoy this video.
Thanks, Kahaso. Becky.
Hi everyone, I'm really happy to be here. It's a wonderful time having really great discussions, and yeah, keep liking our videos. Yes.
Amazing. Karibu sana Rukia. Please introduce yourself and say hello.
Thanks, Edith. Hi everyone. My name is Rukia Hamis, and yeah, looking forward to this video. Thank you guys for tuning in. How about you, Edith?
Thank you so much. And my name is Edith Kemunto, a member of Green Farm. Today we are speaking about something that is pretty exciting. It's post-carbon cities. I wonder if we have heard about post-carbon cities. Maybe I'll ask Becky to go first and let us know what she thinks about post-carbon cities. What are they to her? Would she rather live in one? Because I know she lives in a city already.
I could be in a village with electricity, on a lighter note. But yes, so post-carbon cities, the first thing that would come to my mind would be low-carbon cities. It's a city where carbon emissions are zero. So it's a dream. It's something that we are hoping to get towards to. And the other thing is, I think different cities are on different paths in transitioning to becoming a post-carbon city. So post-carbon just basically means we are no longer slaves for us. Well, that's a strong word. No longer slaves to using fossil fuels as our only source of energy to run our businesses and our households and our industries in the cities.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Becky. I wonder if any of the team members would like to, add anything to that. But before I invite you, I would just like to request Rukia to bring, or share with us rather the linkage between post-carbon cities and, the fight against climate change, and how, urbanization and climate change can be linked via post-carbon cities.
Thank you, Edith. Nice way to put me on the spot there. But yeah, it's interesting that how whenever you think that something won't be connected, something else comes back and it's connected to something way bigger. And I think we all know that what's this? The situation with the climate change is it's contributed by different parts of just the environment. So when it comes to cities are like the biggest contributors of the greenhouse gases, because that's where there's like a huge concentration of whether cars, I don't know, industries, manufacturing industries and whatnot. It's less, you'll find there's less contribution of CO2 or greenhouse gases in the rural area, because there's always a lot of plantation, a lot of wildlife and whatnot that's taking in and recycling all that all that carbon that's going into the atmosphere. So I feel like this conversation is really linked into the fight against the climate crisis, because greenhouse gases are the biggest contributor to the climate crisis, or by obviously breaking down the ozone layer, making sure that the UV rays get closer to us. I think everyone knows about this. I don't want to go deeper into it. But the fact, if all cities switch and shift to low carbon usage, they use less cars, or they maybe run on 100% renewable energy instead of using maybe coal or fossil fuels, I think we'll be contributing to the bigger picture of really, this is the word I'm trying to look for, how do you say repair? Yeah, to repair just the ozone and what all that damage we've been doing for the past few years due to the industrial area that we had an industrial era which we used a lot of fossil fuels, a lot of oil and whatnot. So if we can repair that and come back, I think we'll be closer to the, to the future that we need. Over to you, Edith.
Thanks. Well, you just gave a pretty detailed explanation of, where we need to go, so having our cities to be more sustainable. And I would like to, have Kahaso just chime in into this conversation and provide us with her perspective, because she's the renowned peri-urban stroke rural girl in this hangout. Kahaso, do you have any thoughts as to, post-carbon cities and even the linkages towards climate change?
Thank you, Edith. I believe it's really the way to go, because we don't want to wait till the last minute. Things are chaotic, things have gone really bad, is when now we want to turn into sustainable or green cities. So like the time, I believe, as in, so long as you put your head into it, I believe like anything is possible, so long as we all sit down and we are saying this is the way to go, and we all agree that whatever we're doing right now is not helping. There are several generations that are going to come even after us, and they need to live in a safe space. So the time is now, actually, for us to just come together and really, really think about all this things.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Kahaso. You mentioned a few very important things. First of all, the definition of sustainability has really, really come out from your addition, as well as, the fact that the time for action is now. It's really important to notice that we are living in what we call the decade of action. Between 2020 and 2030, we really, this is pretty much the time to come up with sustainable solutions. Otherwise, time is gone. And again, for post-carbon cities, the other thing that is important to notice is that most people are moving towards the urban areas, whether it's because of, looking for jobs, whether it is because that's where the opportunities are and things like that. The population in urban areas is increasing at, a very high rate. And they say, over 70% of people in 2050 shall be living in urban areas. What does that mean, for cities if we don't make them sustainable? Are there any benefits to post-carbon cities that we can think about from the top of our head at this point? Any of the team members can feel free to chime in at this point.
Interesting that you asked that question, Edith, around just the work, like how post-carbon cities could be beneficial. I think 100% yes. There are more pros than cons to shifting to the post-carbon city kind of lifestyle way of living. I think I was gonna look into like some of the like really developed countries when they put them on the list at the top. Like for example, the first one I think it's Norway, and when you look at Norway, 97% of its countries run on renewable energy, which is hydropower. So I'd really like to like our countries, especially like in our continent, to stop thinking that development needs to be through use of fossil fuels or high carbon intensity usage in our cities, and that we can really get developed even without having to input that. Kenya itself is like amongst the highest using in terms of renewable energy, but still nikatu nataka kwenda back to using fossil fuels and we're still stuck on that stuff. And I feel like that narrative is getting more and more in our African countries. We're feeling like we need to now extract all these different absurd fossil fuels and coal and whatnot, just so we can make ourselves feel like we're gonna be developed in that sense. So I feel like with post-carbon cities, I guess we can be developed but still sustainable in the future. We'll stay for longer and be sustained. And I think with that, I'll pass it to Rebecca maybe.
I'll maybe just add to what you have said. You mentioned about, the reliance of fossil fuels, which is actually one of the biggest plagues we have right now in cities. We all know that, cities, as you mentioned earlier, are the ones that heavily rely on energy. Is what runs cities. Without energy, it's, you know, we almost kaput, if you like to put it that way. So if I think about the benefits of post-carbon cities, I would look at it in the different sectors that actually are very prominent or pronounced in cities. And that would be transport. The other thing would be our infrastructure and how we manage our waste. So apart from just to add what you've talked about, energy, I think we look into how our cities planned. And if we transition to post-carbon cities, it makes us to really rethink and plan well our cities in light of our current, you know, population, and also in light of what will happen. By 2050, just as Edith mentioned, more than half of the population will be in the cities. Actually, 70% of the population will be in the cities. And that is such a big wake-up call, not only to people who are hearing these figures being passed around, but actually to the local governments, the people who run the cities, our mayors, our governors, our city planners. And so the benefit would really help us to really plan well, because for us to achieve sustainable development, it has to be in light of where we have really prepared. I've read some articles talking about vulnerability assessment, checking, really coming to know what are the gaps currently in our cities in light of, you know, climate change happening in our cities. Even before, you know, we started talking about post-carbon cities, many of our cities are already vulnerable when it comes to the climate risks. But from flash floods in Nairobi, where we had some erratic rainfall patterns, where you see buildings coming down, roads getting blocked because of rainfall. And that means that there's still certain loopholes that we have yet to you know, cover up and ensure that we plan well. The other thing, another benefit for me would be, it would really help us to make our cities more inclusive, because when we talk about sustainable development goals, and that would be specific Sustainable Development Goal number 11, our goal is to make sure that our cities are not only zero carbon, but are resilient when we're talking about climate change. And lastly, the other thing for me that is important, are inclusive, whereby we are looking at our populations in the urban cities. Like right now we see like so many of the inequalities we faced in cities are simply because there's not inclusivity. We're not thinking about people who are living in the low income areas. We're not thinking about those who are very vulnerable to climate risks, you know, the people who live with disabilities, the women, the girls, you know, there's so many inequalities that face our cities. So transitioning to post-carbon cities will really help us to cater for our diverse, our diverse population, and it will really help us to bring the conversation board, everyone will be involved. So I think that would be what I would add in terms of benefits for our post-carbon cities.
Thanks, Rebecca. While you still have the floor, I'd like for you to just provide a short comment about the car-free day that we had just recently. Do you think that such days are important? Do you think that these are some of the ways to get us used to low carbon transport? And, you know, what are the options for, you know, people who, you know, use cars on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, it's interesting that you brought this here for the World Car Free Day. I believe this is something that is a concept that is still yet to be captured by everyone. In terms of everyone, I mean countries in the global south, the developed countries, and our cities here in sub-Saharan Africa. So I think it really opens our eyes to what we actually are facing. Some of our cities are being plagued by high carbon emissions because our transport system is not inclusive. We do not have a system that incorporates everyone, because not everyone can own a car. So you'll find like when we talk about owning a car, some of us are owning cars and using cars because of, you know, it's more realistic and it's more, it's how do I put it? I'm trying to get the word. Either it's realistic or something that it's what is affordable, so to speak. You just want to get from point A to point B. And you find that really, when we have the World Car Free Day, it really shows us how many gaps we have, because a city like Nairobi or a city like Lagos, where we have the matatus and the borders, a city like Dar es Salaam, which actually has done huge steps to have the rapid bus transport system. If we went on World Car Free Day in Nairobi, I think it would be a pretty chaotic situation, based on even when we had, like when we had our, the matatas, when they go on strike, people are tarmacking, people are trekking to work, taking walks 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours just to get to work. So if we have more of such days, it will really show us the need that we really need to, the gaps that we need to fill when it comes to public transport, and why we need to be very inclusive when we talk about transport systems. And we have a transport system that talks about the cyclists, that is talking about people who are using other modes of transport, the pedestrians. If you're walking for 30 minutes because you want to, and you're walking for 30 minutes in an area where there are green spaces, you'll be more comfortable other than walking for 30 minutes in a place where it's completely arid, it's a concrete jungle, the sun is not showing any mercy to you. So I think more of such days will really help us to, just urge us to see the urgency of addressing our problems.
Thanks a lot. I would also like to mention, just the fact that, post-carbon cities are good even for public health. We're just coming out of a public health crisis, and of course, we are wired to think, more about our health now because of what we have witnessed and we are still witnessing. We are still in the middle of a pandemic, and just the fact that there's a lot of energy in terms of gas and in terms of fires that are lit in our homes, that we are vulnerable to pulmonary conditions. And so when we move to other safer or renewable means of energy, it would be easier on the public health system. So research says about 4 million people annually die out of pulmonary conditions that could be preventable should we have used other means of energy or of powering our houses. So I think that then that is something to think about, because 3 million people is quite something against the 7 billion of us in this world. Yeah, having said that, I would just come to Kahaso. Do you think that this concept, which seems very foreign and far-fetched at this point, do you think it's a concept that is applicable to Africa?
That's a tough question, because I believe we have to sell it first. Once we are sold on the idea, once everyone is able to see the benefits of what we are talking about, that's I'm 100% sure it's applicable in Africa. But us as Africans, we have to, we have to be really sold about a story for us to really go through it. So I believe so. If we can really sell the idea to ourselves and we can really see ahead, because we only look at this level. We don't want to look further ahead. We only care about what we are receiving now. What are we gaining from it now? And I believe if we start looking ahead, we can really do this. And we can surprise very many people. And I believe it's something that us Africans can really take on.
Thank you so much. I think it's a challenge to, even much as it's an individual challenge, it's also a challenge for our government. And I would like to hear Rukia comment about this, because, increasingly we are seeing governments in Africa wanting to also exhaust fossil fuels or use them. So I don't know what your comment would be on this, Rukia.
Thanks, Edith. And yes, 100%, individual initiatives is a good way to go, or the preferable one. But the bigger players, as Rebecca mentioned, is the local governments and the national governments who actually put in the policies that will put all these things in place very quickly and easily. When Rebecca mentioned the one day of not having cars or buses and how chaotic it gets in Nairobi, I remember the time when Sonko, the governor who was here for Nairobi, tried to make matatus not go into the town. I was for it, but then it got chaotic because there was no, it wasn't planned out, you know, like, so all those people who used to walk, where would they walk to? How do they, you understand? Like, it's just people who relied on public transport to get to work. Like, what was the what was the backup for that? And coming back to just around just like local authorities and also the government, I think they are the best position to really make these decisions. And I guess that's why the youth, ourselves included, are really having such conversations to really push them and make them understand that there are actually options, and we're here for you to help you in terms of recommendations, you understand, to know like how best to really bring post-carbon cities to fruition. I feel like most of the cities that we have, like if you go to Mombasa, Eldoret, they are not post-carbon cities, yes, but the traffic is not as much as when you come to the main like capital city, which is Nairobi, which everyone's on a car, whether you're in an Uber or a personal car, or you're just using your own like matatus. They're all over the place. There's so many people, like you mentioned, Edith, they're like too many people every day. Everyone's giving birth to someone else, and everyone's like moving and migrating from the rural area to come to Nairobi or coming to Mombasa or the big cities or whichever city it is in the world, because they feel like coming to the cities where all the development is, and when you stay next to it, it will bring you some sort of fortune, or you get ahead as quickly as possible. So I feel like government should really look into the policies, but I feel like as youth, we need to really continue pushing them and telling them, hey, you guys said you had this policy back in the day. It's somewhere in your file somewhere. Could you please look into it and actually implement it? Because I feel like, especially for Africa, we have amazing policies that we put into like most of the laws or a legislature. It's just that we put them in, we invent them, but no one like comes back to them and say, oh, let's implement them. Then it's forgotten in the dust. So as youth, let's push them. As individuals, let's do our part, but also like keep reminding the government, like, hey, we need to do this and we need to do this now. And yeah, that's it.
Thanks so much, Rukia. That's really interesting, and you've brought, you know, even another suggestion of a video we could do about recommendations that, you know, cities could take in order to move towards the, you know, sustainable path or direction. Becky, you know, just as you close and as an outside perspective looking in, having, you know, lived experience within Africa and beyond Africa, would you like to comment on these, even as we just get to a close?
Yes, I think the thing we need to also appreciate is that in Africa, in particular sub-Saharan Africa, we have done tremendous steps towards transitioning to post-carbon cities. It might seem like a drop in the ocean, but actually it counts as much. Cities, I was reading a report just a few hours ago before we joined this call. More than 10 cities already have signed the Paris Agreement, which calls nations and governments and people and partners to action to see how we can go beyond, you know, below 1.5. And worth mentioning is a city like Johannesburg, a city like Lagos, Nairobi, I think recently just gave its commitment towards, you know, going zero carbon as a city. That's just to mention a few. I think the thing for us, heavily for African countries and for African cities, is to really go into planning. Planning is what will really help us to see where we are. Carrying out like sort of like a vulnerability assessment, we still do not know how many people actually are affected by our poor planning currently. We only know it partially, because I don't want us to feel like, you know, owning a car is a bad thing. But if you own a car and you know moving from point A to point B will not cost you 2 more hours extra just because of a traffic jam, you know, that would really make sense, because we think of cities where they have those massive, you know, they have the options of public transport, which is very effective. But they also have the option of, if you are using your car, you will not spend so much time on the road, or you will not spend so much fuel, actually, not time on the road, but fuel on the road because of traffic jams. City like Nairobi, we are using a lot of fuel because of traffic jams. Early in the morning when you're moving to your workplace and when you're going back home during the peak hours. So I think the thing is we really have to heavily invest in our, heavily invest in planning, heavily invest in our policies and actualize them. So over to you, Edith, to help us concluding.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much for all your sentiments. I feel like we need to go on a challenge where we try to, record a calculation of our carbon footprints individually, because that's really where you notice how and where you really spend more or harm the environment. So I think it's something to think about, ladies. Maybe we could take on a challenge to measure or record our carbon footprint in a day. Yeah, but otherwise, thank you so much for this discussion. Looking forward to a sequel where we talk about the recommendations for cities to move towards the sustainable direction, a sustainable way. Otherwise, it's time for action. It's the decade of action. Let's go sustainable. Thank you all and have a good one. Bye.